And then I am going to start sharing my screen. Give me just a second to. Okay. All right. And let me get where I can see you guys. Oh, okay. All right, so welcome to our orchard signage webinar. I'm really excited to chat about this topic, not because I have anything really valuable to share, but more because I know that the folks that I've brought here today have some really great notes for us and can give us some really good information. My co-hosts today are Debbie LaBelle from the Education Fund. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. And the other is Chris Smyth from the Common Orchard Project, who is one of our earliest Giving Grove affiliates. For an agenda today, we are going to do some quick introductions. We're going to kind of chat about the Giving Grove and how we feel about signage and why we think it's really important. And then I'm going to pass it off to Debbie and Chris to kind of give some of their takes on signage that I think will be really helpful in the practical, actual application of creating signage. And then finally, we'll do a sort of Q&A at the end. I know that you'll probably have some questions about the techniques that Debbie and Chris have employed. So we'll jump into it. So first, we're going to do some quick introductions. I'd love it if you'd share your name, where you're calling from, and and answer this question of what signage does your space currently have? And I'm going to start with Debbie and Chris, and then I'm just going to move down the list as I see them. So, Debbie, do you want to kick us off?
Sorry. Hi. So Debbie LaBelle from the Education Fund Food Forest for Schools in Miami, Florida. We have a variety of signage which we'll kind of go over in in my section. But yeah, we have educational signage and some donor signage and just, I think marking your space is important. So,
All right. And Chris, you mind going next?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Smith in Cincinnati, Ohio, with the Common Orchard Project. We have over 40 community orchard sites and a 2-acre farm site that we manage. And I would say, I'm going to share about signage, but we could always use more. So there's just seems to always be a need to have more with spaces that we aren't standing there 24/7. So signs are a great way of creating meaning in a place when we aren't there.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, Bernadette.
Yeah, I usually go by Bernie. That'll make it a little easier. I'm in Anchorage, Alaska, and I am a board member for the Government Hill Commons. It's a neighborhood orchard.
Nice. Thanks for joining us, Bernie.
Thanks.
Kimberly?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Barlow. I'm in Pittsburgh and I'm an orchard steward in Spring Hill, which is a very new orchard we just planted last year. Currently, we have no signage, but one is on the way, which is sort of branding for the various orchards in our area. So nothing specific to our orchard yet. We did have some tree ID signs, but they didn't survive the winter here. So we need some new ideas as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly. Dina?
Smith from Kansas City. Rainbow School and South Broadland Church have an orchard and a community garden, and we got a grant last year to update signs. So we have some new signage for identifying private beds versus community beds, and the tree signage to know when things are ripe and ready to harvest and when they're not.
Great. Thanks, Dina. Alan?
Hi, Alan Elfrink. I live in Belleville, Illinois, St. Louis suburb. We have entry signs and we have no rules or instructions. We need to teach visitors how and when to pick. We have all of our trees identified. We have a few educational signs. We have options for donor signage for Venmo, and we get a couple $100 a year just from strangers.
Nice.
Thanks.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what kind of signage you have already?
Sure, yes. I'm in Florissant, Missouri, and currently in our orchard, the only sign we have, I think, is a memorial sign that giving the name of the orchard and giving who it, stating who it's dedicated to, a former orchard worker.
Great. Hi, Kimberly.
Hey.
We are doing quick introductions and then sharing this polling question, which is what kind of signage does your space currently have? Of course, you're a program manager, so that question is involved, but if you want to just introduce yourself quickly.
Sure. I run the Giving Grove program chapter at Tree Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I oversee and help support stewards at about 55 orchards.
Awesome. Fred, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. Hey, Fred Conrad in Atlanta, Georgia. And what we use is the modified Giving Grove sign. We had them made on metal, and it basically just identifies that it's a Giving Grove orchard, and it has contact information for the local steward. And that is pretty much all we're using at the moment.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Jill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there. I'm from a little orchard in Saxe, that's in Texas, near Dallas. We have tree identification signs, a small sign identifying the orchard with a little logo, and then an Instagram. Follow us on Instagram, but nothing, in my opinion, nothing big enough.
All right. Thanks, Jill. Mr. Cliff, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Stuart of a orchard in Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm just looking forward to learning something about signage.
Thanks for joining us, Cliff. Kevin, would you like to go next? Are you there, Kevin? All right, let's move on to Jody.
I'm Jody Sola. I'm involved with the Government Hill Commons, Alaska orchard, as is Bernadette and Dave, who is silently watching us since he has no mic today.
Okay.
And we don't have any signage, so we're interested in all kinds of guidance.
Great. Is that David Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, I'll skip him then. Kiva, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I do apologize for my camera being off today. So currently I am in Memphis, Tennessee. I am the orchard program manager for the Memphis, Tennessee with the Works. We have signs, metal signs, pretty much that indicate the name of the orchard. We're really looking forward to moving into more educational signs. And then, like you guys were saying, signs that would help indicate when the fruit is ripe, as well as a more welcoming sign for the community to let them know that this is for them. So that's what we're working on. And I do see one of my other coworkers here, Andrea Fenice. She is here. She is our communications manager. She's going to be helping me kind of get this signage together. So we're looking forward to learning more today.
All right. Well, Andrea, do you want to go next then?
Sure. I will just introduce myself. I am Andrea Fenice. I'm the creative comms manager for the Works. And as Nakiva said, I'm here to support and learn more on how to implement what she has learned in graphics and in the visual aspect.
Thank you. Derek, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Derek Jennings. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. Just started a orchard or food forest here, and have currently have no signage.
Okay, welcome, Derek.
Thanks.
Alex, you're up next.
Hey everyone, Alex Pop. I'm with Neighborhood Forest, and we're kind of on the other end of this. We plant food forests at schools by partnering with corporate sponsors. So we're in the process of developing our first signs for a food forest we planted last year. So very perfect timing for this call, and really excited to meet everyone and learn from others.
Great. Jesse or Jess. I see you unmuted, but I can't hear you. All right, we'll move on to Maureen.
Yeah, hi, Mehreen Ansari. I do the communications and community engagement for Heartland Conservation Alliance, which is a Kansas City nonprofit dedicated to conserving the Blue River. We currently have no signage. We're kind of in the process of like developing our signage, so I'm hoping to get a little bit more clarification of like what is too much info, what should it look like, and things like that.
Okay, great. And then I think last but not least is Dean.
Hi, this is Dean Tebby. I manage food forest for Denver Urban Gardens in Denver, and we actually have fairly good signage, I suppose. We have a very large sign, which I think you may have had an example of from your uh, initial screen share, and we have some signs for around plants, but we can always use more.
All right. Yes, Dean, you're going to see a lot of your signs throughout this presentation.
Oh, okay.
You guys happen to have some really great signs, and we had our conference there recently, so I took a lot of pictures of them.
Oh, gotcha.
Jesse, were you trying to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I think
There you
I got
go.
my mic working. Excellent.
Yeah.
Jesse Gilmore. I am originally from Kansas City, but I am a recent graduate at Indiana University in local government management. My background is in food systems through Kansas State University, so I'm looking for ways to elegantly integrate food into mostly public spaces like public parks and food systems and land use and zoning and things like that. So I definitely love the idea of public orchards, especially in parks, giving the park spaces a food aspect. I don't have any signage because I am currently not affiliated with any community orchard, but I hope to change that here in the near future.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jesse. Well, so I'll tell you kind of how this webinar got thought up. Last year, the Giving Grove piloted a program with an organization called Stand Together. And we wanted a way to gauge what the visitors' experience was to our local orchards. So far, we had only been able to survey our orchard stewards or, our registered volunteers, but we hadn't been able to hear the voice of the people who were just walking by and finding our spaces. So we Stand Together help us bridge that gap. Ironically, this program started with signs. We installed signage with QR codes and community orchards around Kansas City, and we invited visitors to complete a short survey. Those surveys allowed us to collect feedback directly from the people experiencing the orchard for the first time. And then Stand Together aggregated the data and helped us find common themes across all the sites and to better understand how the orchards are contributing to community connection, learning, beauty, food access, and neighborhood pride. Some of our biggest findings were that most of our orchard users are just neighbors. They're not volunteers. We weren't sure always if the actual neighborhood and community were coming into these spaces and using them, or were they people that were officially associated with the orchard. Most people found the orchards by walking past them, which speaks to why signage is needed. And then we also found that as many people valued the orchards for the green space as the food. So it speaks to the need for these spaces to be a good place for a community gathering. And at the end of the survey, we asked all these folks if they had any suggestions for us to make our spaces more usable And overwhelmingly, the number one request was signage. And I know from working with the Giving Grove programs for 6 years that that is a topic that comes up quite frequently. It's not just how to design the best signage, but also how to print signage, where best to put it, how does it navigate weather. There's just a lot that goes behind signage. So today I'm going to talk about why signage is important, but then I'm going to have Debbie and Chris talk about the actual application of using signage. So to start us out, I just wanted to do like a quick, if you want to raise your hand and ask or answer, but also just think about this question yourself. If you were a first-time visitor to your space, what would someone learn before talking to anyone? My orchard that I steward is in a school space, and because it's in a school space, there's a fence surrounding it. So I imagine when people walk by our space, they often note that it's a school playground and that because of that fence, the space is not for them, which is not the case. We actually need signage there to let people know they're welcome to come in through the fence and pick fruit. Would anyone else want to offer what they think folks think when they walk by their space without talking to anyone? Nope. Okay. So this is some of the things that signage does do. Signage signals that this space is intentional and cared for. Without signage, it can often look like just a group of trees on a city block. It doesn't necessarily say that this is an intentional space. It can also invite people to maybe mistreat your trees if they don't think that they're owned or intentionally taken care for. And we all know that fruit trees can look a little wild sometimes. So some folks need to know that those are intentional. It also defines boundaries and expectations. I particularly love this sign. This is out of Kansas City. It's an orchard that's managed by Kansas City Community Gardens, our local program. The things I like about it are there is this map here. And why that's important is while the orchard is a U-pick orchard open to the public, there are community garden spaces that are not. And so they're being very intentional with letting people know that while you're welcome to pick in the orchard, you really cannot pick from the gardens. Those are people's personal space with their own fruits and vegetables growing. It also gives a lot of information about the Giving Grove approach, which is basically kind of how we're creating these spaces that are owned by the community, they're an asset of the community, they're designed by the community, but they're here to serve the community too. And finally, they also included a list of what types of trees you'll find while walking around the orchard, which I find really nice. Every orchard is unique, and so these types of signs help visitors navigate the space and understand what it's used for. It also can help explain the customs of the space, such as on this sign, you probably can't read it because the text is so small, but somewhere it will say, take what you need, but leave some for the rest. Meaning don't come out here and pick fruit just because it's there, only take what you can use. Signage also can make a public space feel welcoming. This sign I took in Dallas. It is outside of a community services building, and it's not a traditional park space or city block. And so they needed signage to let the community know that this actual growing space was for them. And so it makes it feel a little more welcome. It can also, if a space is not typically public, it can help visitors know that they're still welcome in, sort of like the school example. Signage creates educational opportunities. Dean, here's one of your signs here. It's very, very helpful to have signage that shows what the fruit is, when it's ripening, and how you can use it. In Denver, they use an illustration, but there's a little chart down here that's hard to see, but it basically has the 4 seasons symbolically and has a little bar where you can expect this to be ripened. But they also have it written out. And why I like that is if you're not an English speaker, you can see that there's a sun, there's a flower, or sorry, there's a snowflake, there's a flower, there's a sun, and there's a leaf. And so you can kind of interpret that this ripening period is somewhere in mid to late summer. On this is a Kansas City example. What I like about this one, this is Nancy. She made this one at the library create space. She says it's about $1 for a foot of this vinyl. It's weatherproof. And in this particular orchard, they had a lot of people confused about whether they could pick there for free or not. So she wanted to let them know that this fruit is free to them. But she wanted to make sure people were picking it when it was ripe. So she's created a system where she ties a green ribbon around the trunk of the trees that are ready to be harvested. And so she's created a sign that explains that to everyone. And then it connects people to food systems. This is out of Detroit. They have created a pizza oven or built a Pizza Hut oven in their food forest. And it's a kind of a way to build community. They can harvest their food and then cook it right there. But what is a pizza oven? This isn't something that's generally, we can assume that people know about, but they don't always know. So it's an opportunity to connect people to a way to cook food. See, I'm losing my cursor. There we go. And then signage creates community. It can tell the community story. This case, this orchard over here is at a home and school for children and mothers who are escaping abusive situations. So they have a large sign here that kind of shows the history of the program itself. But then they also have a smaller sign here signifying that this is a Giving Grove orchard. It can highlight partners and volunteers. Another sign out of Denver. They put a little sign up there. A lot of their orchards are adopted by business partners, and it helps fund the spaces. And so they use signage to kind of recognize those partners and call them out for their support. And finally, it can encourage ownership and pride. This sign is made from the orchard that I steward. As a little historical context, our school is about to undergo a major renovation, and the school will be shut down for a year while they're doing that. And I host a green team, an environmental club for the kiddos. And so they created this sign for two reasons. One, they wanted to let the orchard know that it was loved and missed while they're at another school location next year. But also, I'm putting this big old sign facing all of the contractors so they know that this is an intentional space and they need to keep it safe while they're working on the school building. So I would like to encourage all of you guys to think about this. What is one thing, if you had to get one sign, what is one thing you wish every visitor knew about your community space? Would someone mind sharing?
I hope
Hey
this works.
everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I
You
was
got
just
it.
going to say, I am very much into teaching people about plants that they think they understand, but they might have the plants might have other aspects that they didn't know about. So one of the things that I really was interested in back when I was in school was edible landscaping. So presenting these plants that people might not know are actually edible, providing a new perspective to the people, to the visitors on these plants.
I think that's fantastic. Kiva, did you have something you were going to add?
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say most of our properties, and I don't know if it's like this in other states and cities, are fenced. So it's really important for me, especially with the communities that we're in, for them to know that this is your space. You can hang out here, as well as take these fruit. And more information. I would love for them to get more information about growing their own food or growing their own fruit trees. So that's really important to us for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a foreign concept to most people that they're allowed to walk into this space and take what they need. I feel like that's a real educational hurdle often. Does anyone else have something they could share?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure everybody knows how to harvest what is ripe. Our visitors harvest everything in our garden, not just the fruit trees, but also vegetables. And a lot of times they will remove the entire plant, and that creates problems.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Anyone else before we move on? All right. Well, then, next up, I would like to introduce you to Debi LaBelle. As she mentioned before, she runs the Food Forest programs for the Education Fund in Miami, Florida. Debi, I am going to stop sharing here and allow you to take control.
Try to get the technology. Everybody see?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So hi everybody. I am Debi LaBelle. I am the Senior Program Manager for Food Forest for Schools. I came to this position just about 12 years ago now. So we've been doing food forests in Miami-Dade public schools since about 2014. Miami is a very large school district. So we started out with about 10 food forests, and now we're at 30. And it's everywhere from north all the way down to Florida City. Land-wise, even though we're very urban, it's a very large school district. We're about 3 times larger than the state of Rhode Island. So just for the county alone. So, and we are in a lot of different schools all over. So we still have some, smaller edible gardens, but then 30 of them are food forests. And everybody kind of knows, just to give an example of what our food forests look like. This was one of our schools. It was grass. The school asked us to go into this space because this is where the aftercare pickup was. And it's nice and mowed now, but there was a lot of times when the grass was super high and there were red ants in the area, and it just wasn't a very welcoming space. And this is what it looks like this is about 8 years of growth. So you can see the shade and the difference that the plants and everything makes. But while we understand that this is a beautiful thing, the garden people understand it, when district officials came to the schools, they were like, what is this crazy jungle you have on your school property? So we definitely realized signage was a big, we had to separate ourselves and differentiate, like, that this was intentional. So we started out with the Food Forest for School signs. We didn't have a big budget. We went to our art teachers in the schools and we asked who could help us out. And one of them had a laser cutter, and he did this on the side. He made signs on the side, and we always love giving back to our own community. So we were able to hire one of our art teachers to come up with these signs. And this way it differentiates from other school gardens, and to say, like, this is something that we are proud of and we take care of it. So these are at the entry of all 30 of our food forests. And then a couple of years ago, we actually, again, trying to figure out who the audience was, we really had to think, because we have the teachers going into the space, we have the students going into the space, we have the administrators at the school, we had district officials going. So we have a really broad audience that we needed to convey what the space was and that it served a purpose. So we received a grant specifically to come up with two different signs that we identified as our biggest issue. And one just explained what is a school food forest versus a school garden. So we worked with an interpretive sign company and initially put these signs in 4 of our 30 food forests. And basically did a vision board of what we grow and how our food forests looked. And it was really important for us to note that it was a learning space. Like, this is a classroom and not just a school garden. Like, this is for learning. This is for students to be outside and actively doing activities. So all of the plants in here, you'll see when you go into our food forest. The pathways are exactly how we create them in our food forests, like the giant milkweed. We have cranberry hibiscus and bananas and papayas and moringa and lemongrass. So all of these plants you'll actually see. And each of these green boxes coincide with different lessons that we do. So they are learning centers. The signs are for the students to also use for different science lessons. And that, so our biggest focus for these was that it's a classroom. It's another, classrooms don't have to have 4 walls, that they can be outside as well. And this was our second sign. So the keystone of all of our food forests is to have a banana circle for composting. We've just identified composting circles as the most sustainable for us. Like, you can trim the food forest and clean up and dump everything right into the banana circles. Bananas are very greedy plants. I know we're not all from the same climate. So while bananas work for us, it could be a tomato circle, it could be a bean circle, it could be, anything that works for your climate, that just generally greedy plants, like plants that take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. If you're constantly composting into the center of it, it is, it's helping them grow fruit. Our banana circles are always popping with bananas. So before we started doing the composting circles, some of the teachers said that they had bananas. They were trying to get to fruit for years on end. As soon as we started composting in the centers, they were harvesting bananas throughout the school year. And the kids are always excited to see them and watch them grow. And thankfully they're a pretty fast fruiter and grower. So the kids can watch the whole life cycle of them. And again, we made this a science center. It's the whole, photosynthesis and decomposition, physical change, chemical change. We worked with the interpretive sign designer she identified like the fungus and the arthropods that are actually in Florida soil. So it is very specific to and relevant to what the kids, if they start digging down in there, that's what they're going to see. And one of the other things I wanted to mention was, and again, like kind of tying it all together, you can see the same kind of classroom back there. So it is a learning center. There's a purpose to this. And the wording on here, we worked with the interpretive signage designer we kind of gave her what we wanted to say, and she made sure that it stayed at a 2nd grade level, so that the younger kids could, pretty much anybody in the elementary school space would understand what we were trying to say. We didn't get too complicated with big words so that they could understand it. And again, all of these latch up with our science activities so we bring the students to the signs regularly when we're at the schools to say, okay, we're going to talk about the energy, and here, we're going to start here, and then you're going to go off and explore and do your different activities. But this was hard because we had district officials coming into the schools and saying, why do you have a garbage pit in the middle of the garden? And we were like, it's not a garbage pit, it's serving purpose. So we really turned an issue, the phone calls, the emails from district officials, from principals, from administrators going, I don't understand this, I don't like it. And they wanted us to get those plastic compost tumbler things. And we were like, but this is so much better for you. So now they see that there's a purpose to this. And, it turned a problem into a learning center for the school. And they're proud of it. And I cut it off at the bottom, but we do have some of our donor logos. And I also worked with the school district we actually have multiple departments within the school district, and we have their school district logo on the signs. So, sometimes things are going great, and then the principal gets changed out and there's a new principal, and they're like, what the heck did I just walk into, and what is going on at the school? So they can see that we do have the stamp of approval from both the curriculum department, food and nutrition department, and the sustainability department. And here you can see the kids are, they're pointing at the bananas on the sign, and then they can look right up and the bananas are growing right there. So it ties it all together. And they love in the little ones. And we also work them so they're at an angle and at low enough. So even, I think these are kindergartners, so they can see them easily at a height that they can see. After we had, so the banana and the food forest circle, the banana and the food forest signs, we started out with 4 signs. We got a grant from the Forestry Service, Florida Forestry Service. And then we've slowly been able to keep asking funders for more funding. And once the design aspect was probably the hardest part, and once we had the design down, then we can just go back and manufacture more signs. So we've been slowly adding them over the last couple of years. And this, hopefully by the start of school year, we have all 30 schools will have the banana circle and the food forest signs. Then we received some funding for resiliency, and our food forest and banana circle signs were so popular that we were like, okay, perfect. We're going to add more signage to the food forest, and we're going to loop in. We realized the mental health counselors weren't using these spaces, like the science teachers, the math teachers, the language arts teachers were all using it. But everybody outside of that little bubble of teachers, they were like, it's a pretty space, but I don't know what to do in it. So we developed some resiliency signage. And again, we worked with the same company that designed the other signs. These are a little bit smaller, and they're face up. They're about the size of, I don't know, like the no parking signs. So they're, or, a handicap sign kind of a thing. So they're a little bit smaller, but we worked to make, unlike the character sign, it's simple action items that the kids could do, like watering plants. We have, this is the tick seed. It's the state flower of Florida, and the zebra longwing butterfly. So going out into the food forest, these are plants and butterflies that the kids will actually see on a regular basis. And we also, on our vision boards, we had a picture of, this is Junior. He was smelling a plant, and it was just the most peaceful image I had seen. So she just illustrated the picture that we had. And again, the bananas, every food forest that we have is the banana circles. And we talked about picking up trash and just taking ownership of the food forest. So they're simple action items. And then critical thinking and problem solving. This was a picture we had of students. It started to rain and they were out in the food forest, and they picked up a banana leaf and used it as an umbrella. And it was like, that's the perfect example of problem solving. They figured out how to keep themselves dry with a banana leaf. So these are also at all 30 of our food forests. And, we were thankful enough to get a resiliency grant that helped us to make that happen. And then you can see here's Junior with his sign. He is so proud that he is in all of our schools and just helping students with resiliency and we use them as classrooms and as areas. For donor signs, if you can see back here, because donors can it's hard to put too many donors on these like permanent signs because it's a lot of money. And, we try to be very, aware of. So these signs, while the donor may not be, these signs will be at the school for the next 10, 20 years. Sometimes the donor is not funding the program for the next 10, 20 years. So we do have, we call them like the corrugated plastic election signs, like with, people who are running for government, the yard signs. We put those in and we'll highlight different donors with those. And they're pretty inexpensive and they last about a year to 2 years, and we can just toss them and print some more up fairly easily. And that's it on signs. We do give out new resource cards to the students. Some of the schools will cut these up and laminate them next to the plants as a way of tagging the plants. It's hard sometimes to always put signs on plants because plants just naturally move from one season to the next and they may be growing in one area one year. But we have these in English, Spanish, and Creole. So we have a lot of, we're very multi-ethnic here in Miami. So it does help when parents come in and the students come in that they can understand and see. And we are very conscious of having the picture as well as the names of them so that they can see what is growing in the food forests. If anybody wants to know about our activities and modules, there's a QR code right there. We have science, math, STEAM, and resiliency on the QR code. And I can always put that in the chat because I know I'm probably getting to about time. There's my contact info, and I can put that in the chat as well. If anybody wants to know the interpretive sign company that created our food forest, banana, and resiliency signs, Angela Mele from Studio Understory, she's actually in Washington State, helped us to create those interpretive signs, and they've been incredibly helpful to our program.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. I'm just so impressed by her artistry, but then also how functional those signs are. I'm sure people will have questions to ask you, but I want to go ahead and jump into Chris's presentation and then save the questions for the end. Chris, you want to take over piloting this ship?
Yeah, sure. All right. Let me just pull things up. So video, where am I presenting? Gosh, share, there we are.
And just as a housekeeping note, I will be sending out all this information later.
Cool, are you seeing this, everyone?
Yes, we are.
Cool. Well, great. That was awesome, Debbie. Thanks for sharing all that. And so cool to see all that stuff happening in Florida. It's such a different ecotype from us up here in Cincinnati. And that's generally where I spend my time is Southern Ohio and thinking about all this. So yeah, I heard some questions in the chat like bananas, what else? That's amazing. Yeah, so seeing some of those signs are incredible. I've always been rather intimidated by creating signage because one time we got a sign made and like worked with a kind of a marketing firm, and it was like $400. And to me, I've like scrapped the Common Orchard project together with grants and funds since 2017, and to think like, dang, that was one sign that cost $400. That's a lot. So I've been trying to figure out some different approaches, and I think all of those. So I'll share some ideas. Basically on the other side of what Debbie was sharing. And I think if you've got the funding and if you've got the the will and the vision for drafting out language and basically creating publications, and getting those up into community orchards, you should absolutely do it. But I hope that some of this will be a little bit of just how to get something up and how to make it a little less intimidating. So for just a little context, the Common Orchard Project, like I said, we started in 2017. We've planted about 41 community orchards in the greater Cincinnati region. We also have a 2-acre farm site that we manage, and we're partnered with a larger network called Green Umbrella, which is a regional climate collaborative. And we are just a program that I started and then kind of got glommed onto this larger nonprofit. Here's just a bit of an aerial view of the farm. This is an old photo, but there's a lot of space there, and like I said before, like if we're not standing there, like pointing at stuff and saying things, then a lot of meaning is getting missed, especially with food forestry. There's so much to become literate in food forestry. It takes us on this side of the Western Hemisphere some time. People who are not like intimately involved in acquiring resources from the land, that we've got to do some translating for people. Here's a couple images of some of the orchards that we do. We do a lot of these rather linear patterns with black plastic in the understory, and then we add a bunch of companion plants to all of that. Right, it's a little chaotic, a little crazy, like what the heck is going on here? So we've been just kind of trying to get as much signage as we can. Here's another aerial view of one of the more mature orchards. This photo even is a few years old. So the things I'm going to share about or focus on are part of what we're doing for every community orchard, and every place is so different. So I'll share what we're thinking and how we can help with main garden signs. Some community orchards that we work with already had a main sign, so it's like, cool, you're done. Check the box. We'll move on. But most of what I'm going to share are either how much it costs, how to get it done, more on the practicality side. So I'm definitely happy to answer questions, but hopefully I can get through some of those things. Like I said before, fancy signage, I look at this as one of our partners, especially on the right, the Mill Creek Greenway Trail. If I look at that and think to myself, like, how am I going to, CNC route with some kind of industrial metal plasma cutter, an I-beam, like, I'm going to be frozen and do nothing. And even this one on the left, this is one I was up in New Hampshire with our friends up at with Richard Hodges. And I still haven't found exactly like where to buy this is the thing. And like, I hope what I can do today is like give you some trailheads of like, here's where to go, here's how to find these things. So I really do like this and how they were doing some signage, and like, I just haven't yet figured out how to click buy. Anyway, so those are some fancy signs, and here's what we've been doing. So one, you know, admittedly, this was working with a local makerspace. So our library makerspace is great for like vinyl and other signage, and they have a laser cutter there. But this was like a more membership-based makerspace in Cincinnati. They became friends. So we've been CNC routing out main garden signs. If this is an option. So maybe it's not an option, but maybe just reaching out to people and saying like, hey, can you help us out? They have like a member fee that they kind of waived because one of them is near one of the orchards. Here's just a whole bunch of language to get this done. And I'm sharing this so that it's maybe a little bit more clear. But basically, these signs cost us about like 30, 40 bucks to get into the ground. And it looks quite nice. If you look back here, we just didn't yet put the posts in when I took this photo. There are posts now. We're not forcing these two orchard stewards to stand out in the field all day. There are posts on it now. But some of that I got this idea from, like if you just like look around, like who's doing durable signage, who's standing the test of time. This is up in Acadia, and a lot of national parks, are like it doesn't even need to be painted or stained. This is a rather durable thing. I don't think national park employees want to go back up on top of this and replace this every year. Like looking at those kind of examples and seeing what can work. Staining and whatnot, that took some time. So like I'm mapped out here, and you can take a screenshot or think more about this later. These kind of main garden signs are super durable, really low material cost. They're rather labor intensive, but I think it's a good opportunity for batching some things together, working with a volunteer or two, especially if you have one who's like dedicated to the staining and the painting. That's kind of the long-term thing. But we're doing that with several orchards. We're putting in these main garden signs. Another one that most everyone I think can and should do is whatever feels like a good, like your branding kind of orchard sign. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to pull from to do this. We work with a local company called Rockwell Sign and Banner. I'm completely expecting that there are several sign companies in your region who are exactly like them. You don't need to like call up this group in Cincinnati and have them ship stuff to you. Like they exist where you are. Um, but like I said, one group charges like $400 to like help design and mark and like fit the thing, and they probably just outsource the actual printing. And these folks, like this sign on the left was like about $25. And to me now, with the lowered cost in my mind, or the real cost, as opposed to like I walk up to an orchard or a garden space and look at it and go like, wow, what a pretty sign. I do like that. To not know what it could cost gives me like fear and concern to like go forward. We'll put a QR code here to go to our website. If you find your sign person, we use Canva for graphic work. I would encourage people to avoid using AI to create the graphic, but I am not a graphic designer. And I'm the person running the program, and I don't have a graphic designer like always at my fingertips. But using AI to coach you about exactly what to click and where and what to think of and brainstorm what content to create, I think could really help you move forward. Even if it's silly little technical things like look at this screenshot. It looks terrible. What's going on here? Like, oh, well, like try to fill out the banner, add a border, just stuff that I'm not thinking about, or work with a graphic designer. Yeah, so those I think are really important. These aluminum composite, full color. I think it's pretty affordable. This is another project that we've been doing inspired by Giving Grove. So they made these tree tags. We're doing it on the same material, this aluminum composite. I tested it on the corrugated, like the yard sign stuff, and those were half as much. It was like $1 for each, like 3.5 by 4 inch piece. But it felt so cheap. It felt like it's going to more likely disintegrate. These are holding up really well in orchards. If you want, you can scan this QR code with your phone or whatever. And I'll just say the real interesting part of this project, what we did is we took every variety, and this is inspired by Giving Grove of like trying to identify about what season it'll be ripe in. You never get it perfect year to year, things change. But what we did is we put onto our website a profile of every single variety of every single fruit variety that we have here. So this one is late Korean. So we'll have a web page that's not like easily findable on the website. It's just kind of buried. That is specifically for late Korean. So we wrote up a whole draft of like mostly copy and pasted a write-up of what would be a good description for that, and then we embedded that into the QR. So it's not just going to our website, it's actually going to a more elaborate version of a description of late Korean. And that was, again, there was like some AI that we used that. And I think the real clutch part was like working with mostly just like the plug and play of like copy and pasting stuff and having a good workflow. So like we have 35 of them up. on our website. And for me as a program manager, I was like, dang, this is an expensive, a time-intensive thing. So, but I hope that is helpful or interesting to you all or like replicable. For the companion plants, like Debbie was saying, plants move. What we use is this Brother printer. That's the model number there. It was 62 bucks, or it's $62 right now on Amazon. These little metal plant labels that are 50 cents each. We were talking with somebody locally who's like been labeling their plants, like their hostas and whatnot, and they've used this system for 10 plus years and it's been fine. Which I'm, some of our oldest orchard is 10 years. So like to have that advice from somebody that this has worked for them and been pretty durable to stand up to UV and weather, you print it out, you peel and stick, and you put it on. It is pretty time intensive, but I just gave 400 of these to a volunteer who said that they would just like, I just wrote up the description, like, here's how many I want of each of these varieties. He said, like, I'm just hanging out sometimes and I'll just keep plugging away. So if you got that kind of a sweetheart, then put them to work. But of course, these can move around as if plants move. This is what we tend to plant in the community orchard. So it's obviously like quite a bit of different varieties of things. And instead of listing this on like a large sign somewhere, our preference is to put it in as immediate contact with those plants. There's just a slide I threw in here on mapping. Don't have a ton of time to get into this. This is more expensive, but this is what we tend to do for maps. And then we create maps from that, is use a drone to take aerial photography to get like basically a base map. And then I'll use a program called Concepts, or you can use something like Procreate on an iPad Pro to draft out, drop and drag various icons of fruit trees and things like that, and then label stuff. I think being able to do this and putting a map like that in an orchard, that's where we want to get. We're not there. We've only done that with a handful of orchards at this point. But this is kind of the template model of something that we've used in other descriptions. Okay, I'm running out of time. Improvised signs. Here are my two recommendations. Get yourself some garden markers by Artline. They are the best for permanent markers. Permanent markers are useless. Permanent markers should have an arrow pointing toward a garden marker, and then you grab the garden marker and you ignore the permanent marker. For anything you need to like keep as a sign and not wear off. Also, paint markers. I've worked with an orchardist for a long time, and he's like labeling a lot of his nursery stock onto plant pots and whatnot. And he's like, "Yep, the Edding 750, that's my go-to, so that's what I've been using for a long time." And this is just an idea. I've used this a dozen times of just like materials you have around that are durable, like the lid of a Folgers can or something like that. Writing whatever message you have to do, you have to try to create quickly that you're not going to be there 24/7 to communicate. Any material they've got, a scrap of wood with a paint marker on it, a scrap of wood with a garden marker. Here's a little bit that I would say. I'm less in favor, or I'm less able to spend time drafting very large form, beautiful signs. And to me, I think some of the most important messages are just telling people when to harvest. So it's like, wait, don't harvest, putting that on some kind of a material. And even if it's like talking with your sign person and saying like, hey, I need 30 copies of a 3-inch by 4-inch thing that just says ready with an exclamation mark. And then finding good ways to fasten those. So you can nail those to trees. You can fasten them with zip ties, reusable zip ties, even the little, like I've got some office supplies here, just clip them onto something. If they walk away, they cost $1, they cost $2. Maybe that's sad. If you need a quick message, just like a piece of cardboard or something like that. Some other suggestions, like we just even said in this call, like what parts to harvest. I think sometimes we get overwhelmed by information, and if that critical piece is buried inside a lot of text, I think many people these days glaze over at first glance. Like it'll take them a little while to sink into the space. But if you've got critical information, just like, hey, your steward's there and like they just picked a peach and it's ready, then the ready sign goes on. And there's a dozen things that you can do to attach that we could talk about. I know we're wrapping up on time. One final thing that I think is super interesting, uh, creating videos of how to harvest, attaching that to a QR code, printing that somewhere, and putting it in the orchard. I think creating short videos, even if they're terrible, even if you're a bad speaker, even if you have to edit it, or even if you can't edit it and you don't have the time to, um, it means a lot to people. And that's what I think signage does is it creates meaning and purpose, like so that other people can look and see like, oh, someone's caring for this space. And hopefully it looks clean and interesting and full of life. But to add just a little bit of meaning, I think encourages people to also care for the space. That's it for me. I will wrap up there.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So we're at 2:02. So I know that some of you will have to hop off. But if Chris and Debbie, if you guys can stick around for like 5 minutes, I'd love to be able to field any questions anyone might have. And for anyone else, I will be sending out a recording, the notes from these slides, and also other resources that have been identified today. So do we have any questions? I saw one in the chat, Chris. You might be able to answer this. For folks who can't grow bananas, what's another plant you could put in a compost circle?
It's really so like I would guess I would go back to Debbie and say like is the purpose of it kind of a biomass plant or are
Yeah,
you trying to get fruit?
it's just more plants that tend to need a lot of nutrients in order to produce so you can do tomatoes, beans, just anything like that's wants a lot of nutrients. For us it just works with bananas.
Banana.
Yeah, with mostly in the Midwest, there's so much more. So like Florida, and it's such a different ecosystem, and more like syntropic agriculture systems are much more sandy, and nutrients are just kind of falling out of the soil all the time. And many other places have more silty or clay content to their soil, so nutrients stick around a little bit longer. Um, I think many things are heavy feeders. But you can also get away with a lot of like nitrogen-based fertilizers like Rovita, which is like a chicken manure thing, just or Osmocote, kind of a slow release micronutrient thing, as well as comfrey, somebody mentioned in the chat, and other mulching plants, other things that kind of produce a lot of top growth and chop it and drop it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say too, thanks for showing. I know I showed probably more of the higher end on signs. But like I said, we've been doing this for 12 years and it's only in the last couple of years that we got the fancy signs. So I'm really excited about them. But, we went to our art teachers before that in our community and, just put out calls of like, who can help, who has ideas, even with the big metal signs, like I didn't expect my art teacher to have a laser plasma cutter, and he came to us and with the idea and we were like, I love it. So yeah, I think just going out in the community and seeing what's available and who's willing to offer services. Our graphic designer that we use for our program is also a 5th grade teacher. So, a lot of teachers have side hustles as well. And they're willing to help for they believe in what we do, so they're willing to help. for, on,
Right.
the cheap.
Yeah. Definitely tap on your network. And I'm going to, in our follow-up email, I'm going to throw in some templates that we use at the Giving Grove that you guys are welcome to use yourself or just use as a starting place. Like Chris's tree ID tags, we'll throw those in there. And you guys are welcome to use those. We have migrated most of I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I used to do everything in InDesign. I've migrated everything to Canva so that everyone else can access it and plug and play as they need. And just like Chris said, you've got a good printer in your town. You probably have one with a big heart too that would be willing to cut you a deal or at least help you find the right materials and figure out how much you need to fundraise for that. So I really encourage you to go local versus, a big online company. Um, and do we have one last question before we close up? Nope. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you so much for joining us today. I will be sending out our contact information in the next email, so you can feel free to follow up with us if you have any other questions you can think of. And we have other monthly workshops, so please go check those out at givinggrove.org. And with that, I will let you guys go enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah, how was that?
That was great. Thank you. I just sent out Elizabeth. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get to test it beforehand, but it seemed like everything went fine.
Yeah.
It was exactly what we needed. Would you mind sending me your slides so that
Yeah,
I
can do.
can list out those resources?
Yeah, do you want it just as a PDF or
Yeah,
a
that's fine.
PowerPoint?
The PDF's great.
Cool.
Yeah, but that was really helpful. In fact, I was really glad to hear about aluminum composite because we're about to do these ready, not ready signs for all the programs. They say they have like a thumbs
Yeah.
up, thumbs down, and they have multiple languages.
Oh, that's
And
great.
what's that?
That's great.
Yeah, and they're going to be available to you guys for free for the first run. But I was looking at PVC, and now I'm thinking I need to go look at that aluminum composite instead.
Yeah. Uh, it's worked really well. They've
Yeah.
been durable. I think the oldest one I have is like 2.5 years old at this point. It doesn't look a day different.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I have another meeting to jump into, but thank you so much.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.